G'day everyone. I woke up from a magnesium and ashwagandha root induced haze, sweat dripping from every pore, every orifice. Slid out of bed. I had a eureka moment. So I wanted to record something, an idea that I had. I'm sure a lot of us have had similar sorts of experiences. In fact, in some ways, I think that there are very similar pipelines, very similar steps that people walk through for certain processes in their life or certain changes. And I don't think it's necessarily built around age, but around the time that mentally you develop into needing that process to be available. So you work out what the best options are. So I suspect that there's only a few baskets that they fall under. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, that's fine. I'll explain it a bit more. It will probably make sense as we go along. To start with, I'm sure you're wondering why there's a bunch of diverse children here. I did a Google search for gifted students because I wanted a diverse set of children to show up on the page because I would like to mention the school experience. So, at a young age, me and uh, at least 30 other people, probably like 50 or so around my sort of age, were told, well, we were given the gifted student label. Um, essentially, we were put into like an accelerated learning class, which didn't really seem much different. I don't know how it's different, but the learning style was a bit different. It was a bit more independent, which maybe it was like a conspiracy level, or maybe it was like a three-letter agency testing some program rather than us actually being gifted students. But hey, who knows? Maybe they were testing to see if we were psychic or something. CIA, I think, love to do that to see if kids could like travel astral body, whatever. Anyway, so like when you know you're in school, they're like, "Oh, you're so smart, you're so gifted, you're so talented," um, and you just go through the motions, you know. Um, and then yeah, you leave school and you probably develop some form of anxieties and some form of insecurities. I would imagine because you're no longer gifted because the rest of the world has caught up with what you're naturally talented at. So now you're kind of just the same as everyone else or being left behind. And that's probably the biggest message and the reason why I wanted to make this particular video because it's not like a race, right? Everyone is different. There's a curve. It doesn't matter really where you fall on this curve. When you go go out in public, you meet people from random points along the curve. If you live in certain areas, you know, the peak of the curve moves along a bit, you know, standard deviation, standard distribution, 100 IQ, the average, the median, it's skewed to fit normal distribution, so it doesn't matter. It will always be a normal distribution. So virtually half the people you meet will just be dumb because I imagine most of you are probably like, you know, around this sort of region, maybe even higher, maybe lower. Doesn't matter. You go out in public, you meet someone at a voting booth, you ask them what their stance is on any issue, immigration. You get an opinion from this part of the IQ spectrum. Maybe you get an opinion from this part of the IQ section. Who knows? Obviously, if you go to a voting booth in a very poor neighborhood, it will probably, due to the way socioeconomics work, be a bit more to the left. But in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. Like, if everyone around you is retarded, you're just the king of the retards. Like, it doesn't matter if everyone around you is not very bright. Should you be required to cater towards other people who aren't? Probably not. Usually it damages your own sanity, makes you feel worse. Ultimately, does anyone else really matter in this world other than you? Maybe a little bit, but I mean, the old adage is that you can't help other people if you well, if you can't help yourself. But I mean, the truest part of the adage is like you can't help people while you are on fire, and you're just as human as everyone else. You probably are a little bit more human than other people if you're watching this kind of video. Um, but yeah, like most most, I would say there's a chance at most. It's a 50-50 chance, really, that someone you meet is going to be at or below the average level of intelligence, and the average level of intelligence is quite low, really. And they can all vote and control other facets of your life. Your managers have to fall on the spectrum somewhere. Your landlords, the salespeople you interact with. Everyone has to be a point somewhere on this graph. So if 66% of the population in January had access at 5 billion, so like at another 2.5, 3 billion, like 8 billion people or whatever. So 66% of the world has access to the internet. Half, roughly, probably roughly, would be less than 100 IQ. Additionally, IQ isn't very good for this sort of measure anyway, because um, usually there's a lot of controversy around how IQ is geared towards, well, not necessarily IQ, but like geared towards like Western populations. Like the SAT goes through a lot of ridicule, not ridicule, a lot of like the SAT, for example, is very geared towards Western populations, particularly like it's very targeted towards US knowledge in a few different ways. I can't be bothered bringing up a reference for that. You'll have to trust me, bro. But yeah, 66% of the world, 5 billion people, spend 6 hours a day on the internet. It's a lot. I should make content in other languages. Anywho, yeah, so roughly 2.5 billion people who are 100 IQ or lower will be interacting with content in some way. Now, obviously, there's not that many people using, like, there's not 5 billion people using, like, I don't know how many people use YouTube or TikTok or Insta or anything. There's probably not more than like 3 billion people using Meta service. I would hope not anyway. But potentially, yeah. And who knows? Some of this could be massive farms of like mobile devices locked away in farms that charge per click of Instagram ads or something. Not ads, but like Instagram content or TikTok videos, selling views and likes and stuff. But as a demographic, it's interesting to realize 2.5 billion, 2.8 billion people that you engage with on the internet every day are not particularly intelligent. Which kind of explains some of the which explains some of the popular discourse that comes out. Like, it doesn't even need to be popular; it just needs to be a vocal minority. Like things about conspiracy theories or like anti-vax or whatever political belief, Pastafarianism, immigration, kind of hip and trendy at the moment. You get all kinds of facets. Monkeys and typewriters, with 2.8 billion monkeys. A few of them are going to write something legible, something intelligible. But shout out to my 100+ gang. And that sails into the next point, where there's a very bad sense of analogies which falls around religion and faith, which is essentially, if God doesn't exist, or without a regimented faith, what stops you from killing someone? What the fuck? I often see it from evangelist type people in particular, who I'm pretty sure they just don't fully think out their idea before saying it. But if you need faith, what stops you from just murdering someone? I genuinely believe that if there are religious extremists who, if they didn't have religion in their lives, they would probably just massacre or murder someone just because they think that that's a perfectly acceptable thing to do. I don't think most people consider that a thing. In saying that, domestic violence is, as tragic as it is, it does have a very common domestic violence is a very common occurrence. It's much more common than it should be, and these while there's not a direct overlap between which book, which holy text you derive meaning in your life from, and a moral compass, I would imagine that there are other facets, like where they fall on the standard distribution, how they resolve conflict is probably the biggest issue. But I imagine that there's people who aren't very in tune with their emotions, who can't control themselves, and thus I would suspect that they would feel like, if they didn't have God, or whichever God they believe in their lives, then they feel like they would be satisfied with murdering someone or killing people and not considering it, not thinking about it being rational or not. And I can't remember if I mentioned it in one of my podcast episodes. It's been so long now, but one of the traits of cognition and cognitive thought is that I theorize anyway, is that like self awareness and like personable consciousness is a emerging and developing trait, so that like with what they're doing at the moment with the organoids, the brains in the test tube environments, like so they have labs which they grow brains from stem cells. The brains end up developing eyes and stuff like that. Technically, they aren't classified as like a conscious living being. They do technically live, and you have to feed them to keep them alive. Not that one. So they are alive, but the theory is that because they're still developing, their low developmental state, they aren't conscious in the same sense that we are. They don't have like a lived experience. They kind of just process information, like process the neural stimuli. So the idea, the the dystopian future is that you can actually pay for processing to be done on organoids, and they will complete those computational tasks. So this is an article from 2024, which talks about Final Spark being able to offer a service where you can buy processing time on organoids. So these are processor platforms, so like a computer CPU, except it is made from brain tissue. Essentially, it's made out of neurons. It's cultivated through stem cells, and they are good at particular sorts of tasks. So it's a very niche computational tasks. They have a couple of extra factors that make them pretty decent as well. However, you are essentially getting a human that's in a vegetative state, like if they were missing chunks of their brain or couldn't use chunks of their brain, essentially, because this is a brain before it develops, essentially, to perform these tasks. So it would be like a human before they developed a full brain, doing math problems, kind of thing. And not just math problems, other sorts of things. And like they there's lots of crazy stuff about this because essentially they keep them running inside a simulation, like which is essentially is like a dream, and they feed it stimuli. So it's kind of like keeping. It's kind of like the Matrix, really, where you keep like a human brain kept inside like a simulation. You give it data to work on, and the brain thinks that it's inside it's actually inside the simulation. Except, important to note with organoids, it's not a fully developed brain. It's a barely developed brain, and it probably doesn't have cognition or consciousness. I mean, it might have some forms of like learning capacities, and so I think it does have learning capacities. Like it has the ability to generate neurons, I think. Um, but yeah, it doesn't really have conscious, or at least it shouldn't, in theory, have consciousness. And I would suspect that this would be very, very low on an IQ scale because it doesn't really have the ability to put information together. Like it kind of does, but not really. And my theory is that if it did have the ability to do that, it would perform a lot better and it would also be alive and a functional, basically a functional being. So yeah, like a lot of people that you talk to over the internet could be very similar to an organoid, a small mini brain, and communicate very very poorly constructed ideas potentially, including that they would kill people if their god told them not, if their god wasn't there to tell them not to. And this comes down to other parts as well, with the change of how the world is pivoting, where we feel well, we are more connected than we've ever been, but we feel more distant. Like in a lot of scenarios, we don't have other things to really enjoy anymore because everything's like a lot of people are priced out, or physically the spaces are gone. Like off the top of my head, I think of like Blockbuster or like Civic Video, and like VHS rental facilities, DVD rentals, game rentals, where a part of your experience for your week was to go down to a video store, which was not work, it was not home. You would go to a place that was outside of that, and you would do a task that wasn't, work or chores at home to sustain your daily life. And you would have a look through, you'd probably spend 15, 20 minutes there, maybe 5 or 10 if you don't really care. Talk to people, be around people who weren't there for work, weren't your maid if you happen to live in a mansion. And yeah, like that's the first thing that comes to mind, is that when you don't have to leave the house or leave where you are to go and do things, it does have um, a bearing on people's psyche, right? Like people feel closed in, they feel disconnected from the world around them. Hence the phrase "touch grass." You know, if someone's dropping you too much on the latest Call of Duty, and you tell them to touch grass, because they take the game a little seriously and play it for 11 hours a day. Maybe they went and played pool or something at the local pool hall. It'd be a bit different. They could socialize in person rather than inside 12-minute Call of Duty lobbies and screaming to do uh, nefarious things to people's mothers, obscene acts. Um, but yeah, like there's been a bit of there has definitely been a pivot, right? The types of ways that young people, especially, spend their time has changed away from back when a cell phone you're pretty much only use it for like texting and calling to meet up with people, and now it's evolved to you have your emails on it, you have the functional internet on it in multiple different ways. You listen to all your music through it. You can't escape the depression rectangle. And yeah, I think third spaces have definitely changed in some capacity because as people do get priced out of being able to like go out and do things or spend time, as malls and stuff close down their shops because of economic conditions, and now there's only old people retail stores, home and living stores and stuff. I mean, unless young people pivot into that as well, which I think they kind of did for a bit during COVID. Like people started taking up knitting, for example, during the COVID lockdowns. But yeah, I think the third spaces have kind of pivoted right towards virtual um, virtual environments. So like here we have Discord Discord servers for basically everything you could possibly want. All 3,000, all 4,000 of them, and then Roblox on the side, which has 175 pages of 6 by 6, with the Italian brain rot and whatever's trendy at the moment. And in some ways, I think that this is the natural way that things have pivoted for particularly young people, right? If you can't physically go out and do stuff because you're priced out, or because you live in some um, like a town that's taken away all the third spaces to make way for industry of some kind, or I mean, you can tell when like all the style with buildings and stuff is now brutalist, right? Like the trend with fast food restaurants changing the design to like brutalist type structures where it's just boring grey exteriors, grey, brown, beige, instead of like lively like bright colours and stuff like that. It's quite sad. It's big for the probably the grey paint industry though. Or concrete as well. Concrete stonks are probably rising. I think concrete's quite expensive at the moment, because of like resource problems. Like they can't get certain components. But yeah, these types of tools and applications and games are more popular for fulfilling the needs of the third space now. Just sad now. You don't physically go anywhere. You just put on your headphones and try to tune out the sound of your depressing shoebox coffin apartment and other facets of life as well, right? Like this is just an example of like marriage rates, or the not marriage rates. This is an example of the age that people are getting married, mostly due to like economic reasons, right? The age is getting kind of pushed back. This particular one is not an example of that. This one is. This is from Women's Health. It shows that over time the average age of marriage. It's not a very useful graph, but I mean, it just proves the point really. And this is to do with the number of marriages, so the rate, which like part of it's trending up. The number was trending up and then dropped off a cliff. Maybe it's just a bad time to be getting married. People don't have money in the kitty. And then yeah, it's about the age. They did good in the 1960s where you get married at 21. Now, slowly going up. I would say mostly due to like unaffordability, but who knows? Yeah, I tried to get it as agnostic as possible between different locations, and but yeah, so similar trends is what I'm saying, like from different facilities. Who knows? They could all be using the same data to calculate it all. And then it also goes on to home ownership. Now, I didn't really want to find data for this. I just did a Google search for this. But as you can see by looking at each of these graphs, they all show the same thing, which is, it goes up and then it kind of tapers off, plateaus, and then starts to trend to go down. Possibly, you could infer that. But the general trend is that, it's curving up and then it plateaus. And then depending on the graph, it starts to go down. And again, this could be for multiple reasons. But the reason why I wanted this in here is to prove the point that it's not just you, and it's not a race, and everyone is equally screwed, and you're not exceptional, and it doesn't matter. And most likely there will be some form of solution to this problem in one way or another, because if these trends continue to happen where people get less intelligent and don't get married and don't buy houses, it would create a larger hostage working class kind of thing, but it also doesn't really help your nation progress kind of thing. Like if this happened with a particular nation, like if the US was like, okay, screw it, we'll just make houses completely unaffordable, and people, like, even fewer people got married, they would probably end up increasing like immigration to compensate with like the rate that wages were increasing kind of thing, right? Like they need to bring in people who are willing to work for cheaper to fill jobs because other people can't afford to do the things that they want to do in life. It's all intermeshed. And now something that I asked for ChatGPT because there's something that I saw a few years ago. It wasn't a few. I don't remember when it was, but essentially the career is dead, and in a lot of ways, I think that's true. But more towards the fact that people now don't want to work 30 years in a company that doesn't pay the like doesn't go out of their way to reward them for staying there for 30 years, right? And in this age, I don't think it really matters because a lot of skills are cross transferable, especially if you're like white collar. If you're blue collar, I mean, there's probably a lot of skills that are transferable in blue collar as well. Um, but yeah, like a lot of the skills are very transferable, and a lot of the work is fairly meaningless anyway in white collar. In blue collar, um, I don't actually know, but I would say that a small portion of the work is quite insignificant, but a lot of the work has like meaningful ways to measure its success. Like you can physically see like someone lay down concrete or put timber framing together as an example. You might not see how long it takes, and they might give you wrong. They might send you an invoice that's for more materials than they use, but like, the gist of it is you can materially see the product a lot easier. But yeah, if you just ask ChatGPT, hey, um, you know, how often should I be looking for a job? ChatGPT's suggestion is, once a year, have a look around, and then every couple of years, go out and look, because companies don't reward people who stay loyal to their company. They put an emphasis on a budget that focuses on attracting new talent. So the way, like, a career should really shift away from being loyal to a single company, you know, the old adage of like climbing up the ladder. It should shift towards skills that you find enjoyable, skills that you excel in, skills that you like to do, skills that are marketable. Um, many jobs don't really need someone who has the experience that they do. Like, what if you're asking for 5 years experience for like an intern role or an entry level role? Then what's the point? Who is going to want to work that role? And in this video in particular, I think that as well has kind of eroded the psyche, because now not only do you not have anywhere to go in your free time, and you can't afford to live your life how you want to, you can't get married, you can't have children, you can't buy a home. You just don't. You have to exclusively choose, do you want to travel or do you want to own a home? Like that's a choice that people make. And so it's just, yeah, why would you let things that you have no control over dictate the quality of your life? So you may as well just take the bag, you know? Don't, like, what's the point in focusing on a career? And then that takes me to the idea of like the side hustle, right? So, like the gig economy, which personally I think has largely been a waste of time. It is very hard to be successful and to turn over money very well. In fact, there was a state, there was a graph that I saw only recently. There's 2 million women on OnlyFans who make less than $50 a month, which is also like half of the OnlyFans selling accounts, creator accounts. So they've made a decision to give the public internet access to a lot of detail, you know, about the way they look in exchange for $50 a month. And it's not just that. The sentiment is similar for like Uber drivers, as an example. Like I'm just using this because it's like a popular side gig, right? So Uber apparently takes 70%. And then so after Uber takes their 70%, you need to shell out on all your deductions and your mileage, the repairs to your car, because you're using it more. So if you value your time at 13 New Zealand dollars an hour, or 21 if you're in the US, apparently. But you're not going to actually get that, right? Because you need to be able, you need to get rides. I mean, you probably could get quite similar. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe you do get the $13 an hour. Part of the reason now is due to enshittification, right? Like Uber started strong. They sunk a lot of money into making it a really attractive option for drivers in I can't remember if they got the drivers or the riders in first, but yeah, maybe they got the riders in first. They're offering like huge discounts and stuff. And then yeah, they roped in the other half because they were like, well, we have a monopoly on this, so you may as well come in to use it. And so people did, and then after they hooked both the users and the drivers, they were like, yeah, cool, okay, now prices go up, and the app gets really shit to use, and our quality goes down, and we offer price tiering in the middle, to like the standard that you were used to paying now gets brought up to the next tier of pricing, and we introduce a new cheaper option which has less stuff in it. Kind of kind of what Netflix has done actually. With they have like a tier at the bottom now, which is like you can join, pay a subscription, and you get ads just like cable TV. Oh, they don't. Oh, well, but you know what I'm talking about. Oh, here we go. Pricing. Oh, basic ad-free movies. Okay, cool. Have they not done it, or I don't think that's right. Maybe New Zealand doesn't offer it. I just know that Netflix have done that. So yeah, the enshittification. And yeah, so what effectively what they do. That's right, like an anglerfish. They dangle the light, and then you're like, oh shit, that's a nice bright light. I want a piece of that. And so you go up to grab it, but it's just an exceptionally bright light, but it's really small. So when you grab it, it's like a pea, but you thought it was a lot bigger when you were looking at it. Or like a carrot, like a carrot dangled in front of a horse drawing a cart. But yeah, the point is though, the point is, you start off as a gifted student, and you end up driving around for Uber, making $13 an hour on a good day. Then you pay more money to sink into side hustles that don't work out. So you're just stimulating the economy really by paying like supply stores, like your local Bunnings or Mitre 10 or Office Max, by buying like stationery and power tools and stuff that you don't use. This is if you're middle class as well. If you're lower class, you probably just, I don't know, work a second job really. I don't know if you have much of another option. But yeah, the sacrifices people make. But yeah, if you're a gifted student, if you got lots of certificates and were told that you were exceptional and now you feel dead inside, I can understand why. But rock on, brother. You're doing an amazing job. You know, don't let the don't let the drugs and alcohol problems get in the way of a good time. Um, maybe gambling. Maybe you have a horrific porn addiction. Whatever helps you cope. Doesn't make you a bad person. Just whatever you need to get through the day. It's a pretty miserable world. Sometimes if you got to touch grass, you got to do what you got to do. You need to work 3 extra jobs to make ends meet. You're doing amazing, buddy. Keep it up. You deserve to vote and solve your problems just as much as every other person who's suffering. And maybe the other person is a few points further to the left on the IQ scale. Have a good one.